May everyone please stand for a flag salute. Thank you. Ms. Fennick, may you please do the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Emily Bays,
Present.
Julie Epstein.
Here.
Epstein,
It's
sorry.
okay.
Adam Black,
Present.
Deborah Brooks,
Here.
Rachel Gilliard,
Here.
Nanette Melkonian,
Here.
Adam Smith.
He's en route.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Do I have a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor? 6-0. We will be back momentarily. Thank you.
Can I make a motion to reconvene into public session?
Do I have a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Ms. Fennick, may you do the roll call, please, again?
Yes. Emily Bays,
Present.
Julie Epstein,
Here.
Adam Block,
Present.
Deborah Brooks. Here. Rachel Gilliard,
Here.
Nanette McConian,
Here.
Adam Smith.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda of April 5th, 2022? Ms. Epstein, do I have a second? Ms. Brooks, all in favor, please? Mr. Smith, are you in favor? Thank you. 7-0. Okay. Thank you and welcome again, everyone. As the board knows, we've added this additional meeting to go through the draft budget because we'd hoped that the New York State budget would have been adopted by April 1st and we would be working with our completed state aid numbers. Unfortunately, the New York State budget has not yet been adopted or actually presented, and in fact, it's been extended until Thursday. So tonight's budget, though we've been assured, is, well, Dr. Hines has confirmed to me that tonight's presentation will highlight the accumulation of the prior meetings and will outline where we stand at this point in time. So with that, I'm going to turn over to the report of the superintendent, Dr. Hines.
That's perfect timing, actually. We're not going to have an enrollment report, and I know Dr. Shields is very upset about that. We will have that at our next Board of Education meeting. Just for general information, on the agenda for this evening, we will be appointing our new Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. We didn't time it, so he walked in with his wife on purpose, but it was perfect timing. Once we actually approve, I would like to chat about that and how thankful and how excited we are to have Dr. Sean Feeney join our administrative team here in Port Washington. The second thing I want to discuss very quickly, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Shields and Dr. Allen in a second, is where we are with the District Protocols Committee, and just a really brief update. As some of our community members may know, there's been an uptick of COVID cases at Salem over the past week, and so with that, we sent some correspondence home to our families. And just to provide a little more context and detail, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Shields and Dr. Allen.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. So for the community, the District Protocols Committee met today to discuss this recent uptick that we're not only seeing in Port Washington and at Salem Elementary specifically, but that we're also seeing across the county. So this is the first time we've seen this uptick since masks became optional. This is something we had seen before the change in mask optional. But now we felt like this was the first occurrence that we needed to really look more closely at it because we're working under some new circumstances. So we discussed today communications to parents and staff and the importance of that being timely, how protocols can be adjusted based on unique circumstances as they exist. And in this case, it was in one school on one grade level. And we reviewed the structures that we have in place when we see a possible cluster of infection. For example, the Building Protocols Committee at Salem met, and they reported back to the District Protocols Committee, and we were able to share their conversation with the committee as a whole today from a district perspective. Dr. Allen also spoke to the Department of Health here in Nassau County. And they assured us that we were following the proper protocols, which was very reassuring as well. And they're seeing this happening in other schools around the county. And I think what was helpful to hear from the Nassau County Department of Health is that they feel that the mitigation measures that we've taken and that we have in place are appropriate. So that was reassuring to hear from them as well. Dr. Allen, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Dr. Shields, I think you covered everything.
Okay. Dr. Hines?
So I just want to conclude as far as what's been happening. We're keeping a very close eye if there are any spikes, and certainly in any of our other buildings. I think the one thing we've done over the past 2 years is learn as we continue to move on. So with this, I think the most important aspect we need to consider is communicating in an effective way with our parents and with our staff to make sure they are the most up-to-date, and that was reinforced certainly today at our district protocol meeting. And that's all I have, President Bays. Thank you.
Thank you. There are questions from board members on this. Ms. Brooks, you had your hand up first?
Ms. Gilliard beat me to it. Would you like to go first? Okay. Thank you for the update. On when you see an uptick in the classrooms and the parents are notified, are the children who are close contacts being asked to wear a mask if they're going to be in the classrooms, or are they being quarantined? What did you determine would be the protocol for that to prevent further spread within the classrooms?
So part of my conversation with Department of Health today was about that. So at this point in time, there's no requirement to quarantine any students. Notification is required, which we send out, and masks at this point are not required either. So it's just a matter of monitoring and our mitigation measures to continue to keep an eye on what's going on.
So are parents in the subject classrooms going to be notified from now on if there's a positive case in the classroom, so that if they want to have their child masked, if they want to voluntarily, since you're not being required by the school district or the Department of Health, if they then want to voluntarily mask their child to prevent the spread from some unknown child in the classroom to potentially their child, are they being given that opportunity on a timely basis going forward?
I'll take that one. Yes, in short answer, yes. And again, that's one of the things that we reinforced today, is to make sure that parents have that information, as soon as we could, so they can make that decision, that determination, if they wanted their child to be masked.
Ms. Gilliard?
So I'm just trying to understand, what changes were made. Does that mean that we're going to a classroom level notification system at this point when we have a case? Or is there a threshold, like X number of cases in a classroom, then we'll communicate with the classroom?
At this point, what's important is that once we know, regardless if it's in the classroom, in the grade level, whatever it is, we let the parents know right away. So this is, again, one of the things that was incredibly important, I believe, to this committee, is in a reasonable time, for the principal to let the building and certainly grade level know when and if something does happen. And again, if we learn from the past, from before, is the communication piece is by far the most important. It's a lot harder, and I'm not saying this because, our secondary schools, but they will have to communicate more often just because of the way the schools are constructed. But at this point, that's what we're going to do, and when we meet again in 2 weeks, we will revisit it, and then we will see where we are.
Can I just add, I just want to add a couple of things that were discussed at the meeting today, since I was at the meeting. I think what was clarified today at the meeting was that we are going to be making sure that notification is done within 24 hours when there is a case. If there is a cluster in a particular classroom, the classroom will be notified directly about that classroom, as was done in the Salem situation. So at Salem, we discussed today that when they saw a cluster, an uptick in cases in a particular classroom, on Saturday, communication was sent out to the entire classroom that the classroom had an uptick, and that we were encouraging, but not requiring, that students be sent to school on Monday with masks. Which is what we can do. We can encourage, we cannot require per the local Department of Health. So that is, I think, a different measure that was discussed today that hasn't necessarily been done in the past, but the discussion was using Salem as an example on how we can treat an uptick going forward and notifying if there's an uptick in a particular class, correct? And I think, I'm sorry to just add, because I have some other things. The other thing, I think, things we discussed today at the protocol meeting was the changes that were made when there was a realization that we had a cluster of kids in a particular classroom. lunch and snack was put at 6 feet apart. There was the encouragement of wearing masks. The protocol committee at Salem did meet today to discuss the teachers doing mini lessons with all of their classrooms to remind students of the safety protocols of, coughing in your sleeve as opposed to on your hands, proper washing. So there has been a recommitment, and I think that was one of the things we discussed in the committee today, that we're going to make sure that staff is going to be staying more vigilant in making sure that information is shared with our students as well. Like, I don't know, I wanted to anticipate some of your questions.
I really appreciate all the work that's been done. I kind of, I have 4 kids, so I frequently will call the pediatrician, and when I call, I'm like, I can't believe it. Somebody hurt themselves in a new and different way. I have to ask your advice on this. I haven't seen this before. I'm always surprised. Feel the same way about COVID, right? Like, just when we think we know everything about how to handle it, we're in a new and different circumstance, and here we are, we don't have the masks in place, which changes everything again. So I appreciate the work and the thinking about all these if-then scenarios that you're doing when you should be working on educating children. So thank you all again. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So we're sticking with grade level notifications unless we have a cluster, right? And what's the definition of a cluster there? Just so we and all the community is clear on this.
So I don't know if we have an operational definition as far as, X amount. What I do know is that we use principal discretion, and usually what happens is we'll have a principal call, either Chris, Stephanie, myself, and they'll say, listen, Houston, we have a problem. We're up to 5, we're up to 6. What should we do? And at that point, we get together, we have a conversation, and then we move forward, much like we did at Salem. I think the biggest distinction, though, as far as us moving forward, coupled with some of the mitigation strategies that came into play that Emily just shared, is that we talked about in our last meeting potentially updating the school community, whether it's at Salem, Sousa, wherever it is, at the end of the week as opposed to when it happens. Right now it's when it happens. That's the biggest distinction. And I think from there, if it's a cluster, we'll get together and then we'll share it certainly with the board and we'll share it with the community.
So I appreciate that the board and the committee are trying to learn from this experience. So I guess my question is related to, and I'm really happy that we're going to get communication out to the grade level within 24 hours. I think that would be much better and allow parents and kids to make a decision whether they want to math the next day or what they want to do. The question is why are we not being specific to the classroom level? And then the secondary question is, what if we were to get the consent from the person who has COVID or the family member of the person that has COVID to identify, you don't even have to name them, but just say somebody in the class, because, if there's Guggenheim with 5 classes in a grade level, I don't know that everybody in the district, in the grade level is going to mask, but if they know that it's in their classroom and there's 1 or 2 cases, they might be much more likely to mask for like 2 days and then. So why are we not doing that?
Yeah, so we discussed that question with our school attorney to see what level of disclosure can we as a school district provide to the community. And the advice that we were given is that in the case of a staff member, if they choose to disclose that information to their class, they can do so. But it's not something we can do on their behalf. And you asked the other question of, well, what if it's a student? So we can't disclose a student's ailment to a community such as a class. But if the parent wanted to disclose that ailment, they could to a class. Now the slightly different situation though is that a teacher has access to the class more easily than a parent has access to a class, correct? So the advice that we were given is that even with consent, if they choose to disclose that information to a class or to a grade level, they can with specifics. But that we as a school district should not be the vehicle for that.
Okay, so I understand that answer. I don't agree with the legal opinion, and I also don't agree that we necessarily it makes sense from a policy perspective to necessarily follow the legal opinion, but I understand where the committee came out, and I look forward to discussing with our council.
Okay, Ms. Brooks?
So obviously, the sooner we give this information to parents, the more quickly they can act if they so choose to protect their students, their own children in the classroom, and possibly prevent spread if one of their children is actually contagious and infectious without knowing it. So I guess what I don't understand is if a parent calls the district and says, yeah, go ahead and notify the class, why can't the district notify the class? There has been a case in the classroom. It doesn't have to say who it is, but if the parent says, yes, I in the interest of fairness and consideration to the other parents, sure, you don't have to tell them it was my child, but sure, please let them know there has been a positive case in the classroom. Why couldn't the district do that? I don't know if that's the same question that Dr. Block is asking. Maybe it is, but I don't know if it's the same
Well,
answer.
no,
Because aren't we trying to mitigate the spread in the classroom and make
we
sure
are.
that kids can be in school, right, and healthy and
Yeah.
blah, 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 okay.
and I know this has been, I think it's been asked a few times over the past year, which I totally appreciate. Here's my recommendation, because I think we can go around this hamster wheel for a while, and it's an important one to go around. Allow us to consult with our attorneys one more time, so I could put in place in writing to the board in the board packet as far as what the opinion is, and then we could unpack that at a later date. In the meantime, you have our word as administrators. When we find out in real time, we will let the parents know, and they can still make that choice universally if they so choose, much sooner than what we were doing before, okay?
Okay, can we move on? Do you have another comment? Ms. Gilliard?
Just last one. I think, sometimes I think it's helpful to think with a philosophical framework for me. And as I'm thinking about what the right policy is for things, what I'm thinking most of all, what should be paramount is protecting normal for these kids as much as we possibly can. And as we move into this next phase, that's the part that I worry about, right? About creating a situation where we have to go backwards, because I'm very pleased that kids can be unmasked in schools, that teachers can be unmasked in schools, that people can feel comfortable in that environment. And so as we think about it, I think that what Dr. Block is suggesting and what Ms. Brooks are suggesting, the part of that appeals to me is that I think parents can feel more secure sending their kids into the environment like it's a regular day if they know that they'll know if the risk in that particular setting changes. And unfortunately, that risk assessment, I think, is something that parents and just people are currently doing all the time now, right? Am I going to wear a mask in the supermarket? Am I going to wear it in a crowded theater? Am I going to wear it in the park? Am I not going to wear it at all? Everybody has their own complicated algorithm based on their grandparents and at-risk, particularly at-risk family members, or everybody's vaccinated in my family, and so I'm fine, it's open. And information allows them to do their own calculus. And I will say, because I think I can say more easily because Salem is not my school, I'm hearing very upset parents from Salem who feel that they should have known a lot sooner that this was happening in the environment and that they would have handled it differently. Look, this is us following every rule, right? We were taken by surprise, but I'd like to see us learn from it and adjust even more than we're already adjusting.
Thank you, Ms. Gilliard. Salem is not my school, but every school is my school. And as a board member, every school is. But what I do want to remind the board is that we have had this conversation extensively. I think, did discuss, when we did discuss whether or not it was, if we can go back to September or October, there was even a petition, if you all remember, that we received. We did get guidance from our attorneys that we should not be giving classroom notification because it would be identifying a student and would be a violation. We'll discuss this with our attorneys again. But The one reason I think, and the one thing I think we should all not remember is that when we give grade-wide notification, our students are not solely within their classroom. They're going to gym, they're going to music, they're going to recess, they're going to other after-school activities with other children of the same age. So I think that, I feel that we are more responsible by giving grade-wide notification as opposed to classroom. Now, I understand the distinction when there is more than one case, a few cases in a class, that you send out a different type of notification because we are all now without masks and we're worried to give people the opportunity to put the mask on. But I think what we're going to try to do right now is go back, just wrap up this conversation, and we'll get more from you in the packet after you speak to the attorney.
Not ready to wrap up the
Okay,
conversation.
sorry.
So we're talking about like guidance that we got from the attorney. We got the guidance from the attorney months ago. First, I'd like to be in the room when we talk to the attorney for the next time, because I think there's a variety of potential legal opinions, and it's very hard for me to see how the legal opinion is we're disclosing something if we were to ask a student if it's okay to disclose it. So I want to say that I don't, the process should be that the council meets with the board.
We got that. I
Right.
got that. They did, by the way, in the past, but we'll meet again. Okay.
I was there.
Let's
I
move
remember.
on to community no? Okay.
Just a quick question. So I'm assuming, hopefully, properly, that these children have siblings who may or may not be in Salem, in other classrooms in Salem, Weber Schreiber. And so if these children are obviously close contacts, they live in the same house, they're going into the buildings unmasked. So now we have potential spread. I'm not saying that there is spread, just so the community understands, but there's the potential for this virus to migrate. So how did the protocols committee discuss how that would be handled? Following, knowing,
So we have a practice in place for that already. Right now, there are no siblings that have been identified that have tested positive. When we, meaning myself or Dawn Ballerman, communicate with the parents after they fill out our chart, there's standard language that we use, and we explain to the parents that the siblings are now considered exposed, and we go through, they should be consider wearing a mask, monitor for symptoms, test on this day, test on that day. You can get test kits in school if you need that. So all parents, if there are siblings of any of these students, have been told that already.
All right, listen, I don't want to drag this out for another 10 minutes or so, but it is an important topic. And I just want the board, and I think just as important for the community who may be here, albeit not many, but maybe live streaming, that we take this very, very seriously. And we have professionals in place who communicate with each other pretty much 24/7, over the weekend, certainly late at night. This is not a linear journey. This is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, maybe at times 2 steps back this week. And each time we do take a step back, we learn from it. I think in the meantime, though, it's important that this Board of Education knows that when we communicate either with our attorneys, with the Department of Health, and with each other, I think we all have the best, I want to say, prescription in mind when it comes to moving forward. And sometimes the board will agree with some of the things we're doing, and sometimes they won't. But in the end, we will make sure we're crossing all our T's and dotting our I's. And I think, Ms. Brooks, to your question before, I'll make sure I have an answer to that very soon.
Just one last thing. Since, Ms. Bays, you've said what you think our legal advice was. I mean, I don't know what Dr. Shields' conversation was with the attorneys today. I wasn't present for that. But the previous conversation that the board had with the attorneys, my takeaway was a much more nuanced impression of what we can and cannot do, and not a black and white must not, shall not. So since we've memorialized your interpretation in the public record, I just want to make that clear, so that we don't have a record that I think is incorrect.
Thank you. Per you. Okay, we will move on to community comments. Denise, just say your name again because the mic wasn't on.
Okay, Denise Paredes. Hi. There's been a lot of recent discussion around the New York State assessments for grades 3 to 8 as we're currently in the midst of testing season. As we all know, Dr. Hines has called the test developmentally inappropriate and supports parents' rights to refuse or opt out of the tests. On a theoretical level, I agree with that position and have opted my own children out of state tests in certain years for various reasons. My question tonight is around the sentiment that the results, quote, do not mean anything, as Dr. Hines has written on social media as recently as last week. While those who understand the myriad weaknesses of the state tests may feel, on balance, they lack meaning, I feel the administration needs to contextualize meaningless for the parent community. If our district uses the state test scores for anything that would impact a child on an individual level, that impact does not feel meaningless to the parent. If the administration truly believes these tests are meaningless, it would follow that they are not given any meaning in determining any eligibility for any student to participate in any way in any district program. My question for tonight is, are the New York State assessments used in any way, however small, to determine placement or eligibility in any program or service for our district? This question includes, but is not limited to, criteria for placement in core group PEP, double skip math, response to intervention for ELA and math, and referrals to the Committee on Special Education to determine eligibility of services. While opting out may be the right choice for some families, it's crucial that families in the district have the full picture of what the tests are used for and any potential individual impact on their child before making that choice. Thank you.
Jessica Milani.
Jessica Malwani, Manor Haven parent and Parents Council co-president. Thank you for shedding more light on the substance of the discussions at the recent Protocols Committee meeting. However, a question remains on many parents' minds that was not answered in the previous discussion. Why is notifying about COVID at the classroom level, particularly in our elementary schools, any different than notifying of flu, strep, lice, or any other communicable illness for which a notification structure is already well established? Previously, the decision not to consider COVID in that set of illnesses worthy of classroom notification was based on privacy considerations. Infected students could easily be identified by their presence on the live stream. That privacy consideration is now moot, with live streaming discontinued. We do not require parent consent to send out a flu or strep notification. What makes COVID different at this stage in the approach our schools and lawmakers are taking to it? Thank you.
That's it for community comments.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to our discussion item of the evening, and we will turn it over to Ms. O'Hara, who will be doing a budget summary and her recommendations of the administration. Ms. O'Hara.
Thank you, President Hayes, and welcome everyone. Good evening. Tonight we're going to provide a budget summary review. We've had 4 budget work sessions since February. Just to review, our allowable tax levy increase for Port Washington is at 2.583%. Our focus remains educating the whole child to be successful in a dynamic world. We also are putting forward proposition number 2, which would establish the creation of a capital reserve to be funded by surplus funds remaining in the general fund. Our budget adoption is scheduled for next Tuesday, April 12th, with the public budget hearing on May 3rd and the annual budget vote and school board election on May 17th. As we've discussed, there are several budget challenges, really supporting our capital projects that are necessary to maintain facilities and buildings, addressing mental health of our students and staff, providing a well-rounded, equitable educational experience to all students, and also planning for the long-term fiscal health of the district. So the current draft, as of today, is actually below the tax levy limit. It has appropriations of $174,799,928, which is a 4.5% increase over last year's expenditure budget. It carries a tax levy of $150 million, which is 2.56% increase over the prior year. which is below the 2.583%. So over the last 4 budget workshops that we've had, we've presented quite a bit of information to the board and to the public. So just to kind of review what is actually in this budget. First, we have positions that were funded by the American Rescue Plan in 2022. Those positions will be absorbed by the general fund, which is 3 FTEs for an ICT program, 1 FTE for a teacher at Guggenheim, 1 FTE for an ENL pre-K teacher at Daly. It also maintains all existing academic, extracurricular, and support programs. And then we have the following positions that are also being proposed. A full ENL teacher at Weber, a part-time speech teacher at Daly, a full-time transportation dispatcher, 1 ITS technician at the elementary school, 1 IT aide district-wide, as well as a few different coaching positions, a JV football assistant coach, middle school boys winter track coach, and a middle school girls winter track coach. We also have several items that really coincide with our portrait of the graduate and supporting the mission of the district. As you can see, there's several items here. We have interpreter services. We have expansion of the occupational education program, Naviance at the middle school. It's a guidance tool. Purchase of a security vehicle, a security server upgrade. For facilities, we have a truck. We also have more equipment to support the operation and maintenance of the plant. And also our transfer to capital addresses some of the roof projects, the track resurfacing, and also exterior masonry reconstruction at Daly. We also have cafeteria and classroom furniture. We have textbooks at the elementary school to provide literacy support for our reading programs. I almost forgot about the Real Care babies for the family consumer science that is still in. We have stage curtains for the middle school auditorium. We also have the lease / purchase agreement for over 60 musical instruments through BOCES. We're also requesting the purchase of 2 22-passenger buses, as well as upgrades to the GPS routing system for the buses. So at our last budget work session, you all recall we had a gap of about $520,000 so that we could get below the tax cap limit. Certain things were removed from the request. So we had an ENL contractual code. We reduced that, and some of it will be funded through a title grant as well. We had reductions to supply requests. The climate survey that the district will be doing will now be taken out of a title grant as well. The BOCES Twilight Program, we're going to still continue looking into it, but push it off to a future budget. We also had a reduction of staff that were hired to address COVID issues. And we also looked at the Medicaid reimbursement, and we adjusted that slightly to increase it. So we currently have a balanced budget where the expenditures equal the revenues. So with a tax levy increase of 2.56%, this draft budget is $174,799,928, and it's below the tax levy limit.
Thank you, Ms. O'Hara. I'm going to ask the first question before we turn it over to the rest of the board. So there are items that, the page where you talk about the items that were taken out of the budget, for instance, such as the BOCES Twilight Program that you would be doing at a later. This draft budget that you have presented us is still without the actual final state aid numbers, right? Correct? So what my question is that if we get state aid numbers by Thursday, will will there be any programs that you would be looking to add back into the budget? Or what is the process then? Like, where would you be? I know we have a meeting on Fridays with the budget committee, so I'm asking, what would be the steps, the process-wise?
Sure, so that is something Dr. Hines and I discussed. We're hoping that we will have the state numbers. We may be able to put programs back in that were requested, but also with the utilities and other things that are unknown, we may just wait and see what we do actually get, so that we could have a little bit of cushion. So that'll definitely be a discussion.
First, I want to thank Kathy for putting this presentation together. As we all know, it's a very different experience from years past, so I appreciate the board allowing that to happen, for this to unpack in a different way, but I think it's incredibly comprehensive, and as Kathy said, it's very child-centered, which is great. It was very hard, the last $500,000, to whittle away and to keep students at the focus of what we were looking at. So I know, Emily, you were talking about the Twilight Program for our students. It's an alternative setting for our students who are struggling. If we remember one of the curriculum committee meetings that we had, we focused on graduation rates. This was one of the recommendations that at the time Dr. Pernick had. Also, though, the CTE program, which is Career and Technical Education, we have expanded that, and I'm very thankful that the board has considered that. When you look at the two, the choice was, let's keep the CTE program in place if and when, and I'm praying, we receive more money in state aid, then we can possibly on Friday morning have a conversation about the Twilight Program. But that's where we are right now, and if you see some of the other reductions, we're absorbing those costs in federal title grants.
Mr. Smith?
Dr. Hines actually stole most of my thunder because I was really disappointed to see that the Twilight Program got cut. I actually remember that meeting with Dr. Pernick, and I think Laurie Director was there as well, and I thought they were actually assigning numbers of students that they thought we could have graduate based on these different programs. And I don't have enough off the top of my head, but there was actually a moderate number that they were attributing to this particular program. Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 kids they thought additional children would graduate. How much are we talking about?
So we're not 100% sure how much the program would cost. We had allocated $95,000.
So I just want to register that I'm disappointed that in a $174 million budget, we can't find $94,000 to have several more children graduate. That, being that a district goal is to increase graduation rates, that's like a real dent in our problem.
So I'm just going to wind this back a little bit. I think we would all agree we want our kids to graduate. When it came to 2 programs that we're offering at the high school, you're taking the lesser of 2 evils. Now, I do believe, though, Mr. Smith, that we could possibly do something even above and beyond the Twilight Program and look at a different type of alternative setting. But in the meantime, like I said, we also had reduction in COVID staff that we had. So again, when it comes to Friday, we may want to have further discussions about that to then reintroduce the Twilight Program if what we receive in state aid is flat. So I share your concern about that, but in the meantime, this is not set in stone, it's set in sand.
Ms. Brooks?
Thank you for the presentation. Based on prior conversations, what I thought I was going to see was a list of all by the way, the Twilight Program wasn't, just so the public understands, wasn't cut from the current programming. It just didn't, it was on the cutting room floor for the wish list. But what I thought we were going to see was something where you had the wish list and then maybe a check mark next to what made it so that we could, I didn't think to bring my 5 different presentations, which I thought was brilliant on your part, but I didn't think to bring it to say, so here's what the wish list was for presentation number 1, here's what made it into the budget, here's what didn't, so that the board could see the priorities. This is, to me, right now, just this document, it's in a vacuum. I know I have all the backup at home, but it would be helpful for me to have a comparison to see what everything was on the wish list and what made it into the budget. I don't know if that's easy for you to do.
That actually is what's here. Like I have on the one page,
I mean, like so the things where you say didn't make it into I mean, the
Right.
following steps were taken out to balance, but there was a lot more that was requested from, I mean, for example, from Ryan Maloney, that isn't anywhere in this document, but that was requested as part of a wish list. That, I just think it would be helpful to see everything that was requested and then see what made it into the draft proposal. Because, for example, I don't know if everybody agrees that everything that's here is more important than, for example, being able to do the Twilight Program. So to be able to see what was left out, I think would be helpful to us, everything that was left out.
so.
It would be helpful to me, I'm not going to speak for
Sure.
everybody else.
When technology had their presentation, that was prior to all of the budget meetings. Those were things that I think long-term, they would like to see there. What's in the budget are two of his positions that he requested. And there was a reallocation of his funds into different codes, but we did work with Ryan to do what we could this year, and it's a long-range plan.
So I was thinking of so in other words, everything that was in everybody's wish list is somehow in this document.
Except for the things that are on the page that said didn't make the cut.
Right, that I
Yes.
understand.
So everything in the wish list in our budget meetings, budget
Mhm.
presentations, is there,
It's
is
on
in the
there.
budget. All the wish list, except for what didn't make the cut. But the technology presentation had nothing to do with that.
I understand. Okay, so then my next question is, so for example, for the E&L contractual code requests, where they will be paid for with title grant money, going forward, will that grant money be available each year so the program can be sustained? Or will this maybe make it into the budget eventually, into the general fund eventually?
Sure, and that's a discussion that will happen next year. Because the E&L program was so small, their budget last year, I think, was $6,000, and they were asking for like $350,000. So we're going to gradually increase it.
Okay, and I have one more question. The reduction of staff hired to address the COVID issues, was that one custodian and some AIS and physical ed and?
Yeah, no
No,
AIS.
no
Yeah,
AIS.
the physical education was already taken care of this year. We're talking about the cleaners within the building. So I believe, is it 3 cleaners total that we are reducing? Yeah, so it's a reduction of 3 of the 5 that we have.
The 5 additional from COVID.
The 5 additional, correct.
And Ms. Brooks, you talk about the physical education teacher, but that physical education teacher was approved on July 6th this year when we had a retirement. That physical education teacher has not been part of the budget. Like, that was 2020.
That extra phys ed teacher is no longer at the district.
That phys ed teacher became the Ms. Regan, McGarra Regan replacement.
Okay, I
Correct.
understand.
When she retired.
Now I understand.
Ms. Gilliard and then Ms. Melkonian.
Thank you for all this hard work. I know, Kathy's working hard. I know you're all working hard on it. I'm very pleased that there's so much additional in this budget, because historically we've had a lot of very tight budgets here where we're trying to cram everything we already have into it, and maybe we're adding one position. There's a lot of new stuff happening here, and there's a lot of exciting stuff. I'm particularly pleased about our expansion of the ICT program and that we're moving forward with something that I know Dr. Hines philosophically thinks is very important for our district to have, and by all accounts I hear success coming out of it. So my question with all of this in mind is, I know we're still funding through ARP funds for FTEs for the ICT program for next year. That'll roll on to next year's budget. So that's already 4 additional positions that we have to fund in next year's budget. I'm wondering, this difference of where we are from our current levy to the tax levy limit, what's the dollar amount on that difference?
You mean how much are we below the tax limit?
Yeah, in dollars.
Only about 40,000.
So, that's not a ton of money, but, you know, we have champagne dreams here in Port Washington, and we have a superintendent in place who's now working on a long-term vision for the district and strategic planning. We're approving a new assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. We're a district that I would characterize as really trying to move into the future and think holistically about the education we offer here and improving it. So my preference would be we figure out what else we can do with that, because Port Washington has had a difficult go of it financially sometimes because previous generations, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever, before the tax cap came in, were keeping everything so low and scraping by. And I think it's fantastic that we were able to fund this ICT program, which is a huge change in 7 additional FTEs overall. And I want us to be able to fund the other changes that our new administrative team is going to be recommending to us in the future. And that's not a ton of money, but it's also therefore not a ton of money to save. You know, it's probably 15 cents out of every taxpayer's wallet.
The other thing we need to keep in mind is we received much more foundation aid this year, which was only half of what we were entitled to. We're expecting to get the other half additional next year. So not that you want to go spending crazy money and everything, but you will have the ability to support that ICT if if it's what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we also don't want to go spending money in advance that's like coming from the legislature. Look, I'm hoping it's a done deal and it's coming through, but things happen and things could change. So anyway, that's just my preference, is that I'd like to see us more up there, especially since it's not very much money. It doesn't have really any impact on the taxpayer at all, but it maybe gives us a little more wiggle room if we do that over time.
Ms. Malconian.
So, thank you. I'm very pleased to see the interpretation services that are still here. When you were describing that this describes everything that's in the budget, I don't see CTE here, but is that something that we've added or we're maintaining?
So I'll answer that one. You'll see on, I'm not sure which page it is, but it says 22-23 draft budget and then provides for the following.
Yep.
Where it says occupational education expansion, that's
Okay.
that's the CTE.
Okay, so I also hope on Friday that we can revisit the Twilight Program conversation. I was really hoping that we could fund that, and maybe we'll get a present on Thursday. That would be really good news. And I am also very happy to see ICT on here as well, and am looking forward to maintaining that. As you mentioned, if we get proper funding next year, it's an easy way to get that done. But it needs to be our priority regardless of whether or not we get that foundation aid. It needs to be part of our, as I know you believe it should be too.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm going to just hit the rewind button for a second. I appreciate, Mr. Smith, that you brought up the Twilight Program. The fact that the board's concerned about having it is a great first step. As far as the ICT program, for those who hear the acronym ICT, it's Integrated Co-Teaching. It's an inclusion model. We currently have it at the secondary level. We don't, well, we do now, have it in 3 grades at the elementary, and we're looking to have it in all 6 grades. And so, again, this budget is incredibly student-centric. Also, looking at some just foundational items that have been concerns for the board for a myriad of years. I think we're in a really good place. And you know, Ms. Gilliard, to your thoughts regarding getting as close to the levy amount as humanly possible, I am all for that. $40,000 is pretty darn good, but if we can get even closer maybe, that's good too. So thank you for that.
Okay, so since, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Block and Ms. Epstein, I don't know if you have anything. Dr. Block.
So a couple of points. First, I want to echo what Ms. Gilliard said about getting closer to the tax cap. So I'm confident that we can do some creative accounting to figure out a way to do that. And particularly because we cut the Twilight Program, we're halfway there, right? So it's my hope. And then I also wanted to echo what Ms. Brooks said in terms of what my expectation is to see actually each one of these line items with an amount associated with it, so that we could see, because we were offered a package, but it's possible that the board may want a slightly different package. I'm happy with this package, but I want the flexibility to be able to choose the package. And so an itemized budget would allow us to do that. So I'm hoping that that's something that we can actually have in the next couple of days. Great. All right. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that, and thank you for that, Dr. Block. What I'm saying to the board and to the community, this is my package that I'm recommending to you. So I just want to be clear about that. And then if the board wants to adjust, they can certainly do that. But as of where we stand right now, this is where I think this is a very good place to be.
Okay, so in light of the fact that we do not have the numbers yet per se, in light of the fact of the comments that we've heard from some board members, and I do share, by the way, the concern about the Twilight Program, I think we do have a budget and facilities meeting scheduled this Friday. So if, Ms. O'Hara, you could have, I guess, the numbers associated with each of the recommendations so that Dr. Block can see them. And hopefully by Friday, we will have the state aid numbers, and we could then see if we have to revisit anything or make any sort of adjustments. I am asking that the entire Board of Education be at the meeting on Friday, and that instead of it being a committee meeting, it'll be a work session of the board, because as you all know, Friday is that meeting, and then Tuesday, we are slated to adopt the budget. So I'm asking that if we make our Friday meeting a work session, but an actual work session where all 7 members are present and can make decisions. We could take votes on Friday.
Yeah, I thought we planned that already. but-
We had it, we
okay.
planned it
It was
thinking we
wishy-washy,
didn't know,
maybe.
well, we didn't know if
Yeah.
we would have an actual, number. We thought maybe we would have had
Got it.
numbers and it
Well,
wouldn't
yeah,
have been.
I'm all for it. So
Okay,
that was
great.
what I already had in my head.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everybody. Did you have one? No, we did not. Okay. Ms. Gilliard, I saw your hand first.
I just have a question. I mean, I know we flipped the curriculum committee meeting and the budget committee meeting to give Kathy more lead time, right? To be able to have the conversation on Friday. Now we have state budget numbers coming in Thursday that were supposed to come in much sooner. Is Thursday to Friday morning enough time, Kathy, for you to do what you need to do with that? I don't want you to have to pull an all-nighter for this, because it's ridiculous.
No, I already have a list of all the associated costs with what we have here. So, because Dr. Hines and I had discussed what happens if we get more state aid, which we're hoping, but, excuse me. So we do have a list of everything and costs that are associated with it, so.
Okay.
Ms. Brooks?
Thank you. So over the summer, there were a bunch of programs that were run, I think, exclusively with ARP monies. So that didn't affect taxpayer dollars per se in terms of the budget. Are any of those programs in the budget now for taxpayer fund, in the general fund? And if they are, because we really never had an overview of what was happening over the summer, last summer, whether those programs were effective, and so I don't know what's in the budget now and the reason for it.
Are you asking
In
about the
terms of
summer programs that we run?
Yes, yes. I know they were funded exclusively with federal funds. I'm assuming that that was the case. I don't know if those have been rolled over into the general fund. No. Okay.
I think you said, Dr. Hines, at some point that we were not running them again. Okay.
So I just wanted to double check and make sure. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Friday, we will have a budget work session of the board where we can make some decisions and be ready to adopt our budget on the 12th. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and for your thoughtfulness. We are now going to move on. We do not have any committee reports. Since the committees have no reports, I'm just going to list Policy and Personnel meeting will be meeting this Wednesday, April 6th at 9:30. It will be via Zoom. The Budget and Facilities meeting we already discussed is going to be this Friday, April 8th at 9 a.m. In person at the CAM Annex. The curriculum meeting will be on Monday, April 11th at 9 a.m. That will be virtual via Zoom. And there is no audit committee meeting scheduled, and legislative task force will be meeting on Thursday, April 7th. A change here is that the meeting was going to be at 9:30 in person. It has now been moved to 11:30 virtual, and the reason for the change of time and location is because we will be joined by the Director of Governmental Relations of the Association of School Business Officials. He will be Zooming in from Albany, which is why we moved our meeting into a virtual and changed the time.
Sorry, can you say that again? I missed when is it?
Which one? Thursday,
Which meeting?
the Legislative Task Force. You're good. You don't have to write it down.
Sorry, can you just give us the time again?
Excuse me?
What's the new time again?
11:30. Okay, moving on. Can I have a motion to approve the 322 BOE meeting minutes? Ms. Epstein, do I have a second? Anybody want to raise their hand? Ms. Brooks usually does, thank you. May I have a vote, please? 7-0, okay. Now we move on to the action items in our consent agenda. And I don't know if you want to, do we want to do a vote and then you do? Okay, so may I, going on to our consent agenda, may I have a motion to approve items 11.1.1 and 11.4.1 to 11.6.1? Mr. Smith makes a motion. Do I have a second, Ms. Brooks? All in favor? 7-0, unanimous. Dr. Hines.
All right. So in doing so, I want to thank the board for approving Dr. Sean Feeney, who has had an incredible and remarkable tenure at the Wheatley School. We stole him from the Wheatley School, and we are incredibly proud to have him as our new assistant superintendent. And I believe he's joined by his lovely wife, so thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciate that. Sean is an eclectic mix of intelligence. He's a deep thinker, and he's a visionary, and we all look forward to working with him. So thank you, Sean.
Welcome, Dr. Feeney. We're excited to have you aboard as of July 1st. Okay, we are moving on to, we have no board policy, no old business, any new business? Okay, opportunity for the community to be heard again.
Tessa Jordan.
Right. I just wanted to say that I hope that you will consider putting in the Twilight Program. I think that it's a program that, although apparently will not meet the need of many students, really will provide something for a few students who really need a different kind of a program to be successful in school.
Hi, Regina McLean. I'm the president of the Port Washington Teachers Association. I represent over 500 dedicated caring professionals